as you look around, you see something that looks like hair. And this is what I call horse's mane. And I'm making up that name because there's just Latin names for these things, particularly in North America. North America is not oriented towards seaweeds, and all the seaweeds you buy in the store are from Asia. And so, while we know the Latin names for these things, there's no general common names for them. Now, if we have something like the nori, which you know, the nori is sort of like, we have our own species of that. There's actually 3 species of nori that are on the Pacific coast, 2 of which grow in this habitat, and the 3rd grows on the ocean seaweeds. So if you see a big seaweed washing up on shore, and it looks like it's all, like there's a bunch of material on it that's loose, it's the edible nori. And that's the best tasting, actually. That one is okay, but there's actually better tasting nori out in the ocean. So, so this is what I call horse's mane. Now, anytime that you have a seaweed, there's 3 parts to it in general to think about. So you guys have all learned from Tom, and you know about plant morphology, right? So, for instance, a basic leaf has stipules, a leaf stem, and a leaf blade, right? It can have more than that, and it can have less than that. Okay, you might not have a leaf stem at all, and the leaf can be attached directly to the stem. So, same thing is true with seaweeds. There are basically 3 parts that the standard seaweed has. You might have more, you might have less, and we'll see some of that today. So, the 3 parts are the lamina, which is the leafy part, the stipe, which is the stem, and then the holdfast, which is what's holding it to the rocks. Okay, 3 basic parts. Now, seaweeds are not like vascular plants at all. Those guys have a vascular system. These guys do not. So every inch of these seaweeds is feeding directly off the ocean, not off a circulatory system. So I can cut this off and it'll just grow from the tip that got cut. And it'll grow just like as if nothing happened, right? It's not like a vascular plant where if you snip it, it'll stimulate hormones and it'll grow new branches. That won't happen with these guys. You snip this, it'll just continue to grow as it was. The seaweeds usually are anywhere from 1 cell thick to maybe 15 cells thick. And that seaweed can absorb, or the salt water can absorb in through all of that, which is again how they feed, as well as through photosynthesis. So these guys all do photosynthesis, and the reason that they have that limit on the seasons is because around June 15th is when we get more solar energy, and then these guys can flourish and recuperate after whatever harvesting has been going on. So right now, this is a very lush, this is lusher, is that a word? Lusher? More lush than when I usually do my workshops, which is when it's in season and we can actually harvest. So, but we are going to taste, and the legal way to harvest this stuff is never pull, because if you pull by the holdfast, you kill it. So you always lift. So here, I'm lifting, and the holdfast is just a little bit underneath the sand right here. So if I was going to harvest this, I would cut about here, because that would allow it then to continue growing. It's totally sustainable if you do it the right way. Okay? But I'm not going to do that because we're not harvesting today. We're just going to taste some of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it here. I'm going to go wash it off and come back. Because it's got sand on it.
Did anyone get the Latin for that one? No?
Oh God, he's walking right out with his shoes on.
I can share my notes with anybody who wants them.
They got this rock covered with seaweed and there's a piece all on there.
All right, so let's take a look at this. Oh, I just call it horse's mane, and I can send a list of all the Latin names to Tom, and he can distribute that to you guys. So you can see here, it's very string-like, and you've got little parts that are growing off and branching, just very slightly branching on here. There are other ones that look similar to this, but this one is about the cleanest in terms of shape. It's not complex at all. It's all, like I said, it's almost like a string with little branching parts. So if I pull it apart, you can see, like, here's a little bit of branching going on right there. So it's fairly straight stuff. And let me cut some off so you can taste it. And you can pass it around.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, my preferred way is to add it to whatever I'm eating.
Oh yeah. It's a nice salty flavor.
Crunchy. It's a nice stir
So
fry.
I mean, like literally, how much could you eat of this in one portion without actually feeling ill or nauseous?
Well, so the amount that I had there, I could probably eat twice that much without it being a problem.
In one
However, that's just eating it by itself. There's a difference when you eat it with other things. Okay, so again, what I would do with this, let's say I'm making spaghetti, I might add, if it's just for me, I might add twice as much of that for the spaghetti, and it won't affect me at all because it's mixed in with other food. It's that concentrated stuff that if you eat too much of it all at once, that's going to cause a problem.
Gotcha. And can you say more specifically the minerals? I mean, like iodine, magnesium. Like, what would be the problematic ones?
All of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
in high abundance.
it's just a high abundance of all sorts of minerals. And, you know, you can taste some of them. Like, for instance, if it tastes more like beef, then it's going to have more iron in it, right? So, you know, there's some variation. But you all know I got a PhD in nutrition, right? Everybody knows that by now? No. You don't?
By now, yeah.
Okay, now you do. But I never talk about nutrients. And why is that?
Because we'll all just forget it anyway.
Well, because
I wouldn't.
it's not the important thing. The important thing is diversity in the diet, then you'll get everything you need. If you're like a bookkeeper and you're nitpicking, you know, I got 5 millimeters more vitamin C if I eat this, you know. Don't do that.
Do you happen to know if some animals are getting minerals in, you know, they go once a year to a place and they eat the clay there?
Yeah.
Is this something you can visit the coast a couple times a year, and does the body, do you know if the body holds it? Is that something
You could go your whole life without eating seaweeds and you'd be fine.
but if you wanted to get that mineral,
But if you wanted to have, you know,
irrelevant, then do that.
so there, in my mind, and this is a philosophical thing, there's no such thing as a superfood. There's a super diet. And that super diet is great diversity. In fact, I think I mentioned this the other day, all the blue areas, they eat lots of species. This is more species. Look at, we've got like 30 different additional species that you can add to your diet here. So if you go gather seaweeds and then you dry them and rehydrate them throughout the year and just add them to things, it's great. And the other thing, what's that?
What are the blue areas?
Well, those are the blue zones around the world are where people love to be like 100 and they don't have any diseases, no degenerative diseases. And the first one that they identified was on the Mediterranean diet on the island of Crete. That was the first blue zone that identified. I mean, there were a bunch of them, but they just hadn't identified them yet. Now there's a lot in Asia and stuff like that. Everybody lives long. They have no degenerative diseases, no dementia, no heart disease, no stroke. It's just, and they're eating lots and lots of species.
And social support.
And and there's other things. Exactly. Social support,
Loneliness.
family life, people have a purpose in life. The senior citizens are working their whole lives, even if it's just family support. Nobody's just retiring and sitting there watching TV. Yeah. So, okay. That's that one. What do you think? Flavor, texture?
Really nice.
Crunchy, right? Had a nice crunch factor.
And the other difference now between what you're used to doing, because you go to the store and you buy dried seaweeds, and these, is that seaweeds are great fresh.
I like them. I don't like the ones in the store.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
mean,
big difference.
and you can eat them just like anything else. Like I would happily put this in a sandwich because I got a sandwich, right? Happily put it in a lasagna. Anything I'm eating, and that's the key to using wild foods is to just start putting them in. No recipes needed. You want to get fancy, you can get recipes, but you don't need that. Okay, so notice this is at the lower levels here. So as you go up, you get the nori, right? Because that's higher on the tide table, which means it's more tolerant to drying and rehydrating. And the closer you are to the ocean, the less tolerant they are to dehydration. So, all right, so that's the first one. Then you also notice around here, there's a lot of green stuff. All right, let's get that semicircle going. Back, in the front, back. Back, more. Back, people, come in more. All right, so so this is just regular sea lettuce. We have mostly 3 different kinds of sea lettuces. One of them is very leafy like this. We have others that are more tubular. So if you lift them up, they just look like a long string. Let's see, do you have some here? Yeah, this guy right here. So that's also sea lettuce.
Same species or different?
No, different species.
How do you know they're both sea lettuce?
Anything that is bright green like this is sea lettuce. And that's a common name, but again, each of them has their own Latin name. Again, these guys have a hold fast. You want to harvest them, you harvest them with the scissors. And I'll go clean this off.
Thank you.
It's not the tubular one, though.
Chewy.
Can I take a photo of you chewing it?
Yeah,
You pulled it
so
up. That was the best thing ever.
flavor and texture differs with all of these guys. Now also note that because I just washed it off in seawater and it's been sitting here, that's going to have that they're going to be a little more salty in flavor.
It's chewier. Sealant. Yeah.
I was expecting
Okay, so
What do you mean? Dry for a second.
each seaweed has its own flavor and texture. Some are cellophane and tough and chewy. And some are just absolutely tender to chew. So what do you do? You adjust to each one and process it accordingly. So how many here have heard of nori before? Okay, and what do they use nori for?
Sushi.
Sushi, right?
Is it also in miso soup?
Yeah, well, all seaweeds can be in miso soup. So you're not eating nori right from the ocean. You're not even eating dried nori right from the ocean. What they do is they process it. So that's nori right there. So if you're going to eat that, that's even more cellophane than this and tough. So what they do is they have these big machines and they shred it to death. And then they pour it on mats and then they dry it. So then when you're chewing on it, it's already partially chewed. So it doesn't have that toughness that you would imagine. Okay? So you adapt to each one's properties and then use it accordingly. So rather than saying this one's better than this one, it's like, how is this one used versus how is that one used? Okay. All right, so who else wants to eat more of this before we go on?
Sure.
Yeah, I found it has a nice flavor, but a little hard to swallow.
Yeah, so are my lectures most of the time.
It looks quite similar to the other one we were just eating. Is that the same?
It's different, yeah.
Light.
Should I rinse this and share it, or?
Yeah, let's do the nori now.
Okay.
You can do that if you want.
It looks very similar to the other one we just ate. I mean, how can you tell the difference, really?
Well, bright green versus sort of the army green.
Now, which seaweed is the point? Well, we get to that. I'm sure. Like, which one is the not one to eat?
Which is the not?
Which seaweed not to eat? Yeah, you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. There are a bunch of them, but the most striking one is called Desmarestia. And we rarely see it here, but we might see it out where we're going to go climbing. Well, there's several things. One is that some of them build up calcium in there, and they'll actually wear your teeth down. So that's a mechanical problem. Other ones are actually a toxin, like Desmarestia, which has sulfuric acid in it, which has a nice lemony flavor. But you swallow that, and it goes in with your hydrochloric acid. Big problem in your digestive tract. So each one has its own issue. Did you get all the sand off?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, see, this one is even harder to...
You want to tear
Oh
off
no,
some of
no!
that?
If you want to eat all of it,
I don't think I will, actually.
okay, we'll take some.
So the other thing to remember is that some seaweeds that they're preparing to sell in the markets, they might actually add things to them before they dry them. So they might add flavorings and stuff, miso or some other soy sauce. All right, so flavor, texture, what are you experiencing there?
A little mild flavor.
Pretty mild.
Texture feels the same as the sea lettuce.
Okay.
A little something.
Yeah, and sometimes when you cook these things, like the sea lettuce, for instance, like if you put it in a soup, it tenderizes real fast. So how you cook it makes minerals.
Yeah, with this
Yeah,
nori,
Sand. It's minerals.
Sand is minerals too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would nori tenderize in soup?
Have not tried that yet.
it would be interesting to try it as a wrap because it holds up so well, and then maybe once it's cooked, if it would.
Yeah, but there's a trouble with wraps when you're like,
But if
then it
it's
just falls
tenderized,
apart.
that's what I'm wondering.
Oh,
if
yeah.
it's tenderized in the process, then that would make it ideal.
yeah. So again, that's another thing to experiment on. Can you boil it intact and then use it as a wrap what would happen there. Haven't tried it. All right, let's go this way.
That's what I was thinking. Love your earrings.
All right, so let's get that semicircle going. You guys are too close. Back. No one can see me over through you. All right, we have a hole right here. We got space over here. All right, so this is called angel wing kelp, and it's got sort of a faux main vein. You can see in the center there, it looks like there's a vein there, but it's actually just thicker layers of cells. And the reason that they're there is hypothesized that this part of the lamina is so delicate, and you can see it's been eaten by a lot of sea creatures, that this is so delicate that if it didn't have this thickened area, it would just fall apart, break apart. So this is holding it together, basically. Here is where there are extra parts. So remember we said there's a lamina, a stipe, and a holdfast. Well, this guy also has sporophylls. See, so at the base here, you've got these projections coming out, and this is where the reproduction happens. So on the surface cells, at a certain time of the year, and I don't know the deep details on this, but basically cells develop on here that release and float around and create new seaweeds, and then they plant somewhere. And that happens on different seaweeds in different locations, but here it's the sporophylls. So all of this is edible. Again, if I'm going to harvest this, I'm going to cut like right there, because I want that lamina to continue to grow. I'm not going to cut down here. That would, again, kill it.
What was that area called? The reproductive area?
Oh, these are called sporophylls.
Sporophyll.
Yeah.
And what is it called again? Angel what?
Angel wing kelp. Yeah. So, and sometimes, the cultures that use this, they might use that centerpiece for a different purpose than the softer parts of the blade. And they definitely use the sporophylls differently. So, I am going to, let's see, it's got enough good stuff on it. I'm going to clip that. And some of the sporophylls I'm also going to clip above the base. Again, that lets them reproduce, continue to produce. And I'm going to wash this off and go back.
So how are they reproducing the sporophylls? What exactly happens?
Well, on the surface, they create new cells
Okay.
that then float away.
Got it. Okay.
And then they reproduce with other seaweeds in the ocean. I mean, this happens on a massive scale.
Okay.
And then they land on some rocks and then create a new holdfast.
So are seaweeds male and female, or is that not a thing? Like the sporophylls, they produce new seeds that mate with other.
Well, that's a good question that I don't have the answer to.
Okay.
I just assumed that they had male and female, but they may not. They may just be clones of each other all the time. That would be adaptive evolutionarily,
Yeah.
but it's very possible.
Okay.
All right, let me go wipe that. All right, I'm going to need some assistance here. Anybody have scissors or, yeah, there we go. Okay, you can spread that around. I'll spread these around.
Okay.
Somebody want to hold that for her when she's doing that?
Put your hand or eating utensil there. Oh, I have a. Yeah.
All right,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm
Maybe
gonna
hold
distribute the
one
sporophylls.
end
He's
so
gonna
it
do the
doesn't slip.
lamina.
Yeah.
Different parts.
Oh, it's very satisfying. It's like the fabric.
The cross-breeding for seaweed?
Yeah.
I would love to know what that's like. I drank all mine.
Oh no.
Oh wow.
So
This is
this is
nice
the
one.
angel hair?
This is nori.
This is nori. Oh, that's stuff that was supposed to be more cellophane-y.
I thought it was more tender.
Whoever else was handing them out is
Not as thick.
Is it kelp?
No, this is the angel wing kelp. Yeah. Everybody got some of the chlorophyll?
One more thing.
Sir.
Thank you.
Okay, chlorophyll. Anybody not get the chlorophyll?
I didn't get the chlorophyll. I didn't get the chlorophyll. Yeah. I'm not sure I can tell the difference.
Because it came from a different part of the world.
Yeah, I feel like I could eat a lot of that. I feel like I could eat a lot of that.
This one.
Good for you.
So this one's harvested off the beaches. Like I've gotten bullwhip kelp before, but you got to go out, right? This one you can get off the rocks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's all that stuff over
Oh,
there.
so this is not, this is angel wing, not bullwhip.
Right.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of different kelps.
Nice.
The other thing I want to mention is if you're ever harvesting at the coast, salt water is corrosive. So wash everything that got in contact with the salt water. So this watch got wet, even though it's waterproof, I still need to wash it off with fresh water because it'll destroy the waterproofness over time. If you're in fresh water, you don't have to worry about that, but in salt water, you do. Same thing with my scissors. This will deteriorate over time if I don't wash it with fresh water. Okay. All right, so it's good. The semi-circle will go on here. All right, can anybody see here? So here, boy, these are really in good shape. Yeah, like I said, usually I'm here early in the year and these guys aren't as large as this, but these are amazing to me. So this stuff right here is called iridia. And it's called that, I-R-I-D-I-A. And that's because when this is underwater and there's sunlight, it shimmers a blue color. Like it's radiating color.
Also, it's iridescent.
Not quite. It's actually got a clear layer of cells on the surface. So when the light comes in, it reflects out and reflects the blue wavelengths. So, like I said, I usually don't see it this big, so I'm quite impressed with this. I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of color in there. We're out of the water, so we're not able to see it as well. Maybe there's a pool. Not quite. So in any event, you know, it's funny. When I was growing up, my mom always was telling me, "Don't wipe your hands on your pants." You know, that's all I
John, so
Yeah.
do these bronze, they photosynthesize, or do you
Everything here is
all
photosynthesizing. Yeah.
What makes it seems like all these brown, yellowish color versus the green one? I'm curious, like what,
Well,
Yeah.
so
what makes them more green than the other?
more. Well, so
Chlorophyll.
they all have chlorophyll. They have to have
Chlorophyll,
chlorophyll in order to use the sun to photosynthesize. But they also have other colors within them that overcome the green.
Overcome the green.
Right. So, for instance, you may have see in your neighborhoods, there's a purple plum. There's the leaves are all purple on these plum trees. They're all doing photosynthesis, right? The other thing that happens in the fall, when leaves are dying, you notice they start changing color, and they might go from green to brown. And that's because they're dying, and the photosynthesizing aspects of the cells starts to deteriorate, and so the underlying colors show up. But here, the other colors are more prominent than the green. So, all right, let me go rinse this off, and I'll be back. Yeah. All right, so here, have a taste.
Okay, all right. Silver.
Thank you.
A strange material. It's
Like a plastic film. It's like a...
like bizarre. Stretchy and like rubbery.
Yeah. Could be like a interesting suit or something. No.
Like I almost want to make like, I don't know,
You got some?
like a little band-aid out of it or something. But then it will dry up. This is pretty good. I like this one.
Getting a vision of the birds and a nest.
It's got a different flavor.
Yeah, I like this one.
All right, flavor, texture, what are you experiencing here?
A nice combination of crunchiness to flavor and softness. Kind of a balance there. And this is the iridia, right? Iridia.
Are you saying it tastes like a seaweed? What?
No, I'm just. Did you say this is iridia, right?
Iridia.
Iridia. Yes. Iridia. Iridia. My English language is still coming along, guys. All right.
You're doing great.
Anyone want some more? I'm not going to throw it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Look how strong that is.
She was right, yeah.
Okay, so mild flavors. You dry them, it concentrates the flavor a little bit. Some of these you can powder, and some of them you can't. Some of them, when you dry them, they end up being like hard plastic. And so, and those particular ones, when they're dried, are not good to eat like that, obviously, because it's hard chewing on plastic. All right, so let's go in this direction.
Within this
They told me about it. I was like, is it? It's just a clean set.
Okay, so we got a couple of things down here. Could you step back a little bit so everybody can see? So we've got this right here, which I call Rastafarian weed, for lack of a. Well, actually, I think there was a common name for this called black pine, but I like Rastafarian weed better. And that one is not edible, as far as I know. Still doing research on that one. This one here is called sea sack. And they look like little balloons. And they are edible, but I don't have anybody collect them because there's not enough of them. And we don't want to deplete the resource. So, and they're, I'd say, one of the worst seaweeds from a flavor and texture perspective. Almost no flavor, and they're really tough anyway. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm seeing a little bit of color in that right there. You can see the iridia.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can
If
see
you're looking at it at a certain angle, you can see a little bit of the color on it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Again, if it's underwater, it's going to show that color more than over water. Oh, there's another principle I wanted to remind you of, tell you of, and that's that sea lettuce is an indicator species. So if we were here and there was only sea lettuce, no other seaweeds, then that's a contaminated spot. Contaminated with fecal matter from inland. You know, sometimes when there's floods, and we've got cattle country, and so a lot of manure comes in the water, the fresh water, and it washes over this stuff. It'll kill all the other seaweeds except for the sea lettuce, because it's the closest thing to regular plants that likes the nitrogen, but the other seaweeds will die from it. So if you go to a site, nothing but sea lettuce, don't pick them.
Could that be also an indication of, like, say, the red tide or?
No. No, red tide has zero effect on seaweeds. So red tide is single-celled organisms. There's like maybe 8 or 9 organisms out in the ocean. They're always there. And then there will be a bloom. For some conditions, you know, climate change is causing a lot more heat in the oceans, which is causing a lot more blooms. And so there's toxins in there. They're not enough to hurt you in the ocean itself, but in shellfish, because shellfish are filter feeders, they can siphon about 5 gallons of water a day, and they concentrate the toxins in their meat. And if they concentrate the toxins in their meat and you eat that, it can cause permanent neurological damage. But seaweeds, they're not filtering anything. It's just on the surface. No effect on us at all. They don't absorb it at all. No effect on us. Oh, I love this one.
Is this one different from Iridium?
It's been eaten more, and it's also so when you see stuff like these bumps and stuff, those are just genetic variations in the cells.
Yeah, but it's kind of, it seems wider at the base and then it splits, like this one too. And I've seen a couple like that, and I couldn't tell if they were still Iridia.
Yeah, I think they're still Iridia.
Oh, I see a sheep right
Oh yeah. Can you see the color in that?
Glistening green.
Yeah, it is amazing. So if we had water about this deep right here and the sun was out, boy, it would just all be shimmering. And the sun's coming out, so we may get more of the effect. Yeah, there we go.
Very nice.
So you know the name makes more sense.
Yeah.
It's like a fish.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. The best route to take here would be
So John, can we collect some of the seaweed with us, like for dinner tonight?
we can't take anything away. It's illegal.
I found a piece that wasn't attached. This one.
Yeah, again, if it was earlier,
There's pieces that are sometimes not attached, like this one was just.
look, there you go. You can have that.
Yeah.
I still don't know. Like, I still get.
So you can see we got some sea stars over there. We had some sea star wasting disease a bunch of years back, and it killed almost all of the sea stars, and they're just starting now to return. And they basically feed off of other animals that are growing on the rocks. All these barnacles up here are perfectly edible. Anybody here eaten barnacles before? They're delicious. They taste like a cross between an omelet and a clam. So if you mix the two in flavor, it's quite good stuff. Now you can't really eat them off the rocks because just like egg whites, they're sort of liquidy. So if you break them, they'll just sort of bleed out. But if you cook them first, they solidify. So the only way to really get the barnacles is to get them off of mussels. So sometimes barnacles grow on mussels, and if they're big enough, you cook the mussel, you pop the barnacle off, and it's really good food. We also have turban snails here, of which you guys could actually collect these if we find enough of them. So if they're bigger than this, and they're actually turban snails, which a lot of these will be replaced by crabs. You know, when the turban snail dies, the crabs take their place.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there's another one right there. You can gather up to 10 of these without a permit. So if we can get these, you can take them back and cook them. You have to crack them and then unscrew them from this, basically, if you can. And they taste a little bit like liver pate. So, you're welcome to collect these if you see them. And they should be quite abundant at this time of year. We'll probably mostly see them on the underside of rocks, which you can see there's some over there that are sort of hanging over.
And then these, when they get larger or something like that.
Yes.
While you're eating your turkey.
Yeah, that's a chitin, I believe.
Right, and then when they're bigger.
Yeah, when they're bigger, you can collect those too. But 10 total organisms per person.
Okay.
Even with the license?
No license required.
And ethically, there's enough here.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's see what else. Yeah, so you can just see this area right here. If you were just walking through here, this is what of an area you could really get hurt from, because you don't know how deep any of that is, and the seaweeds are hiding the depth of the water.
There's anemones. Oh,
This
over.
one looks different. It's just darker. Is it still like healthy like all the others?
Yeah, they're fine, except that I would go for larger
There's
ones.
this whole
See,
batch
this,
of
this
them
is
right
actually a little small. You want bigger ones to have substantial amount of food. Yeah. All right, let's put this over. All right, so I do want to point out the sea anemones here.
Finally.
All right, so all these little like greenish, brownish, almost look like bubbles, are sea anemones. And I was trying to find a spot, and you probably will at some point, where you'll see a big one, and they're open, and they have tentacles. But when they're out of the water, they sort of fold up, and then they just look like a bubble here. And they're poisonous. And there are native peoples that can eat these guys. What you do is you strip off all the outer skin and the color on them, and inside will be a tube of muscle.
What is it again?
Sea anemones. There'll be a tube of muscle in there, and if you're a person whose culture has eaten those from the beginning of time, they're fine. But if not, like if I tried to do it, I would be poisoned by it. So the cultures have developed over time the ability to eat those. And you wouldn't eat these tiny ones; you'd eat the big ones, which there's a lot of them over there. These are even that's getting there. But they can get like 4 times that size. And the other thing I wanted to mention is try not to step on them, because you'll kill them, and also real slippery. Like on this rock right here, if you stepped on those, you'd just do a 360 onto the ground. Yeah.
Do you know any cultures offhand that might have eaten those?
Oh yeah, native tribes. Yeah.
Native tribes here, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's a couple small open ones.
Yeah, if you look under the water, they'll open up when they're under the water. It's only when they're out that they close up. So, all right, let's continue on that way. I'll point to... Yeah, so my understanding is they have some kind of anesthetizing aspect to the tips of their tentacles. And when things fall in there, they close up and just emit their digestive juices and eat whatever it is. So they're carnivores.
Are we talking about the anemones?
Yeah, so it's right there. You have to come on this side to be able to see. Yeah.
You got a starfish, anemone, crab.
So I know that the starfish are edible too. However, I have a psychological barrier because we used to dissect formaldehyde ones when I was a kid. And my understanding is that the meat is so hard and filled with tendons and fiber in there, so that they're really hard to eat. You'd have to puree them in some kind of mechanical device in order to make them edible, and maybe make like crab cake kind of things.
No, I imagine it's rubbery. I don't know.
It seems like it would be quite beautiful if how many are just plastering.
Oh yeah,
rocks.
I mean these
They're all
are
open.
it's prolific. These guys, they're one of the most common species that's out there. All right, so we're just going a little bit further here.
John,
Yeah.
what is this one? It's an older shell, but
That's an acorn barnacle.
Barnacle. Yeah.
Acorn barnacle.
acorn.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Acorn barnacle.
Yeah, delicious.
Did you say delicious?
Yep.
Is there a window for how
Well, anytime. So if you go after mussels, you can get them.
Right.
There's no mussels here, unfortunately. So.
So the acorn barnacles you also need to remove from a mussel rather than a rock.
Yeah, so the acorn barnacles that are growing on the shell of the mussel is then accessible. Because then you can cook it while it's still on the shell and it'll solidify, so when you break it off, it'll be edible.
So peeling them off a rock will not keep them
No, you
intact.
can't. You'd have to break them off and then All right, so here, we're just getting into the fucus area. So spread out around here. Yeah, you guys are gonna have to spread out a little bit more because people are not gonna fit within the rocks here. You know.
That's what
Might be, usually they're freeform, but. All right, so our next plant here is called fucus. And a lot of these will not have sand on them because they're high in the rocks, and as the water is washing down, the sand, whenever sand in water, it just falls to the bottom because it's heavy. So yeah, I'm not feeling any sand on these guys. Notice it's a bifurcating seaweed, so that it keeps splitting into two. So here's a piece, then you go further down, splits into two again. So it keeps splitting and splitting and splitting, sort of like antlers. You know, sort of looks like antlers to some degree. And there's two forms of this. There's the non-reproductive form and the reproductive form. So the reproductive form is fat, whereas the non-reproductive form is flat. Okay, there's the difference between the two. And the reproductive form is considered gourmet and really prized by many cultures that eat it. So go ahead and try both of these, both the flat kind and the reproductive kind.
And what's the name again?
It's called fucus. Another name is rockweed. Let's see, there's like 5 names for this,
How
but
do you spell?
F-U-C-U-S.
And the fat ones are full of seawater, right?
The fat ones have a variety of things in them. They've got seawater in there, they've got air in there, nitrogen. A lot of seaweeds, when they have little packets like this, have nitrogen in them instead of oxygen. So,
both reproductive parts edible?
yes, everything on here is edible.
Great.
The tips are the choicest part on here. The further you go back on this faux stem, the less tender it's going to be. So go ahead. What's the flavor, texture? What are you experiencing there?
I love it.
Juicy when you get a little further up.
What's that?
Juicy when you start getting to the center.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Makes me think of edamame.
It's just perfectly tender, man.
Yeah, it's very tender. And in fact, a very traditional way of eating this is to make a big cooking pit. You know, where you create a fire in the pit, and you wrap the food in some kind of leafy material, put the food in, cover it up, and let it cook for a while. The traditional way to eat these was to make a bed of these and then put salmon on there and then cover them again with seaweeds and then cover them again with either thicker, big leafed seaweeds or sun cabbage and then bake that. And then the fucus would take on the flavor of the salmon and the salmon would take on the flavor of the fucus. And it was just an amazing thing. And I've done this with a whole variety of different seafood and meats, and it's just really amazing.
There's like a clear, gooey fluid that comes out.
Ooh. Good for your skin.
Okay.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Some of them, I read some are like semen or something. It's still like reproductive. I don't know about this.
So skunk cabbage was not considered an edible by native cultures. It was considered aluminum foil. You know, you wrap food in it. And sometimes the food takes on the flavor of the skunk. But that was part of the culture and they liked it. It's like growing up on it, right? So it was a normal thing for them. So this is the one that I dried up, and they make excellent potato chips, when they're dried. But again, you don't want to eat too much of this. Just snack a little bit, eat other things, snack a little bit.
Can you say the name again?
Fucus, F-U-C-U-S. And you can see how prolific it is.
Yeah.
Look at this. Massive amounts of it.
Is there anything here that looks not harvestable? Like, is anything not the best quality or dried out or old or?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Yeah, I don't know either. Is it all fresh or is any of it like?
Oh yeah. What you may be asking is, how do you know if it's bad? How do you know if it's gone bad?
Or if it's a higher quality, if it's going to be fresher.
Well, it's all fresh because it's rapidly growing. Now, typically seaweeds, when they go bad, get translucent and they don't look like the original one. So, for instance, here, you see the color difference in these? That's normal variation. Okay, that's okay. But if it became translucent, I could actually start seeing through it and lighter in color, then it's starting to die. Not going to hurt you. Dying seaweed is perfectly edible. It's just not going to be as nutritious. But I'm going to look for something that's dying.
What about that right there? Just like that.
The dried one.
This stuff?
Yeah.
That's just drying.
Although we have
But it's still alive.
Yeah, it's still alive. It can
Jim,
hydrate.
John, how long can they live outside of water like this?
Well, if they dry totally, and then the water comes in and rehydrates them, they'll be perfectly fine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which also means that you can take these home, you can dry them, as long as you're not breaking them up, right? You dry them whole, and then you rehydrate them in salt water. They'll be alive again.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. Don't know.
But a pretty long.
But pretty long time, yeah. Yeah, typically for me, I just dry them and put them in Ziploc bags and keep them in a cool, dry place, and they've lasted for years.
Wow.
There. So.
Is this one still fucus, John? The darker one, or
No, that's a whole nother species. This is called, this is another edible. but I'm not seeing a lot of it around.
There seems to be a lot underneath, mixed in with all of this.
Seems blended when you look closer. Like it's
Well, that's a different species. Yeah.
It's what?
Yeah, so this one right here
So this is
is also bifurcating. But look at the, can you see the surface of that?
Yeah, got it.
So I don't know what species this is, but it's reminiscent of something called Turkish towel, which is, you know, a bigger seaweed, and it's got a lot of this felty kind of surface to it, hence the towel name. But yeah, I don't know this particular one.
And there's another similar neither as well.
Yeah, and some of those are eaten by fish, so it's hard to tell what, like the smaller they are, the more likely they are to be nibbled.
Yeah.
And then you can't recognize them so well. So, all right, so
This is a better, I think.
yeah, that's a whole other species.
But you said that Turkish towel is edible?
Well, I'm saying this is reminiscent of Turkish towel
Oh,
because
gotcha.
it has these bumps on it, but this is not it. This is one I actually haven't identified yet. So, all right, well, let's head up. If we're going to go do some planning, we better go now because we have to go to a whole new site before the tide totally comes in. So let's get back up. Yeah.
Just two questions. One is, do we have dulse on the Oregon coast at all?
Allegedly we do, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. And the second question is, I heard a brief talk from a lady called the Sea Gardener, and she does in Ireland, and she talks about seaweeds. And she said the darker the red brown, you know, the brown, that brownish red, possibly the higher the iodine content. Is that, you find that to be true?
I have no idea.
I
have no idea. You know, the question I would have for her is, does she have access to analyses from a laboratory?
I believe she does. She said she did, from my understanding. But
Okay, yeah, because some people make stuff up. You know, it's easy to make stuff up. I believe it has more iodine. Yes.
Use the right size.
Yeah, that's great.
Too small.
Well, they're all good to eat. You know, I mean, the thing is, the larger they are, the more food that there's going to be in there. So, yeah, so if you want to look around, we can maybe gather more of these. Usually, they really like being underneath ledges of the rock. So, take a look as we're going back.
What are they? The snails?
The
Turban snails.
Turban like TURBN.
Yeah, like the head thing.
Dude, I know.
Looks like they're wearing turbans.
Yes.